If you're an account manager, you're the one keeping the business running. You own the client relationships, drive the revenue, and solve the tough problems for your customers. Most companies don't give account managers the training or recognition they deserve. That's what you'll get here on the Account Management Secrets podcast. In this show, we cover exactly what you need to succeed. If that sounds like what you've been looking for, hit subscribe and let's get into it. Welcome back to Account Management Secrets. Now, I call this show Account Management Secrets. So today, let's get into a secret about a very important topic for account management and customer success teams. The quarterly business review, the QBR. This is going to be a good one because almost nobody talks about QBRs as the thing they actually are. And here's the claim that I want to make today, that the QBR is the single most important strategic tool that you have. It's more important than your dashboards, your AI tools, your health scores. It's more important than the slide decks you built to support your QBRs. And most people are simply sleepwalking through the process of building and delivering QBRs. And so what we're going to do today in this episode is we are going to talk about one variable that is hiding in plain sight, one variable out there that will determine how successful your meetings are. And we're going to talk about what that is, because that single variable determines the health of the customer, the likelihood that they're going to renew, the likelihood that they're going to expand. And literally, it's like all in one. Once you understand this secret, then this is going to be something that's really going to help you change your game and play a totally different game when it comes to QBRs. So there's no guest today. It's just me. I'm referring back to a lot of things that I've learned from other guests on this show itself. So you're going to hear me reference a lot of people. You might have heard those conversations before. So this is something I really have been wanting to talk about for a while. Let's get into it. So first, you know what typically happens. You've probably been there. You've probably felt this. You are in QBR prep mode. You spend 2 weeks getting ready. You get your boss prepped. You get their boss prepped. You've got your marketing people coming or your product people coming. You've got everything all sorted out. You build the agenda. You confirm with your champion at the client side. You've got your 20, 30, 40 page slide deck, whatever it is. You've been digesting all the information. And this meeting has been on the calendars for months, right? So you sent out the meeting invite a month ago and everything is all set. Everybody's totally ready. And then you get that email 2 days before the QBR is supposed to happen, where your champion says, I know I told you that the VP was going to be here, but she just got pulled into a really important client escalation and she's not going to make it. And then 1 day before the meeting, you get another email that says, oh, such and such was supposed to be here, but their kid has got an emergency dentist appointment, so they're not going to be at the meeting either. And then you show up on the Zoom call or maybe in person, and there's nobody there. And you've got 6 people from your side, and 5 minutes goes by, 6 minutes goes by, 7 minutes goes by, and then finally a lone face logs in and says, oh, I know I said there was going to be other people, but there's just so much going on right now. Our schedules are so crazy that it's just me. And so you've got 6 people on your team showing up. One person, probably a junior level individual from the client side, is there. And you're like, okay, I'm committed. I'm here. Let's do it. And so you run the meeting anyway. You say, well, we'll make do with what we've got. And you sort of put on a brave face. You smile and you say, well, yeah, sure. Let's still have the meeting. And, go through the meeting. You go through your slides. You're not getting a lot of questions from the other side, but you're going through it. You brought all these people from your side, so you're giving them an opportunity to speak. And, the general feeling is this is probably not a great use of anybody's time, not a huge success as of a meeting. And I just want to talk about what's going on here, because the costs and the consequences are much more significant than you are likely thinking or that you're feeling in the moment if this has happened to you. So first, the likelihood is you feel embarrassed, you feel awkward, and you're sort of just trying to push through and finish with the meeting. You just want to get it, done, and you're being overly polite and overly deferential to the client, and then what happens is you have to go talk to your boss about this. And your boss is sitting there thinking, oh gosh, does this person really have a command of the account? Do they have everything under control? So your boss is probably also embarrassed and pissed off because they have to go talk to their boss about what went on in the QBR. And generally speaking, people are now looking at you and wondering, do you really know what's going on here? And this is where things get a little bit sticky, things get a little bit problematic, is when we start to think about the consequences of what happens once we walk out of that meeting. And I'll just share, look, this has happened to everybody. Everybody's had a bad QBR. Everybody's had these meetings where you think all these other people are coming and nobody shows up, or the engagement's low, and so on. And that's okay, right? We know this happens. What we're going to do here today is we're going to talk about what is going on and what are the levers that we can start to consider if we want to fix all that stuff. So, with that, the issue really is the read that we're giving to the room. So we have a bad meeting. We have this thing where all these people are bailing, we're getting ghosted, and we can chalk that up to a whole number of different reasons. But here's what's actually happening. We think of this QBR as it's just something I need to get through. I need to survive it. It's a check the box exercise. And therefore, I think about it in terms of mechanics. But in reality, the QBR is a much bigger deal than that framing, right? The QBR is literally the highest leverage strategic meeting you could be having with a customer. So if you're an account management or customer success leader, this is the number one thing that you can be doing that's going to give you insights. It's going to give you air cover. It's going to give you a deeper understanding of your customer. And so that's how I want you to be thinking about this stuff. I know there's this view that things are changing. We don't need to do QBRs anymore. And yes, it's hard to get on a plane and organize logistics and get everybody together, but this remains the number one most important thing that you can be doing. And so as we talk through this and the rest of this episode today, there's three things I want you to be thinking about. Questions to ponder, questions to be asking yourselves about all this stuff. First is, why are we doing QBRs at all? So why do we do them? What do we expect? Second question is, what do we actually get out of them? What's the benefit to us, to our company, of doing these QBRs? And thirdly, what is the benefit to our clients? What do they get out of these conversations? And we're going to answer all three of those questions by looking at one single variable that no one's paying attention to, or at least no one knows how to read all the tea leaves on. And we're going to talk about that in particular, in detail. And just before we get into that, I'll share, I use the word QBR, quarterly business review. Everyone's got a different way of talking about this: executive business review, strategy review, client review, value review, and so on. That's great. I just consider this all one great big umbrella. QBR meaning a strategic, high-level conversation that is meant to happen with the senior people from both sides, where we're talking about the future and where we're talking about the strategy. So let me orient you to what is a good QBR. A good QBR is a strategic dialogue. So it's a conversation. It's not just you showing up and delivering all this information in slides. It's something that is future focused. So we're talking about where we're going. We're not just reviewing all the things that have happened in the past. We have teams from both sides, client and vendor, contributing to the conversation. We're using this as an opportunity to recommit to each other and to recommit to the bigger goal. And this is all around a partnership review. So we're looking at this saying, how are we best off together, right? How are we actually improving all of our outcomes by working together and let's focus specifically on the goals that the customer has. So that's what a good QBR is. What it is not is maybe how you're doing it today or how you were taught to think about this. A good QBR is not about just reviewing support tickets, right? So this is not the place to go through and tell them that they had 25 support tickets and you solved 19 of them and escalated 4 of them and blah, blah, blah. Like, that's not the point. Reviewing tickets, this is not about you just sharing your roadmap and all the things you're excited about. It's not a data dump. It's also not about you interrogating them about the renewal. So sometimes this comes up and people say, well, you got to ask about the renewal while you're in the meeting. That's fine. You can find ways to talk about that, and it's a good idea, but you're not asking them 5 or 6 questions to figure out if they're going to renew or not. That's not the point. And you're not showing up to play defense. So a good QBR is not where you're in a defensive posture. It's where when you're in a contributing posture or an offensive posture is going to be a lot better way to be thinking about this. So these are all skills that you can build. This is something that we do a lot within the Amplify community and the programs that we run within Amplify. We're going to come back to that at the end of this episode. And I'm going to talk about something we've got coming up called QBR Mastery that's going to go through some of those skills. And so let's now talk about this issue that I described earlier, where you spend all this time prepping for a QBR and then you get ghosted. There's different ways to be thinking about this, different ways to be understanding what is actually going on. And there's a lot of ways to do this that are going to feel comfortable and that are going to give you this false sense of security for what's going on. And then there's the way of looking at that helps you see reality. What is actually happening? And so let's say this happens to you. You do all your prep, everybody's ready, you're teed up, you're excited, you're looking forward to it. You get to the meeting and, the C-level person isn't there, the VP level person isn't there, you're stuck with some manager. You're surprised about that. You're probably annoyed, but you're surprised about that. So the first thing that you might say is you might accept the surface level explanation. You know what? It's just a scheduling issue. It's a logistics problem. It's hard to coordinate calendars. It's the end of the quarter. Something came up. We'll get them next time. That's one way you could be thinking about it. You could also be saying, well, at least her team is there. The C-level person isn't with us, but at least her team is there, so they'll debrief her after the meeting. You could think that as well, and those are going to be comforting for you, and you might be able to find something there to latch onto. But I have other news, and I have a different way of reading this, and this is at the heart of the secret here, which is the fact that your customer is bailing on your meeting is the data itself. If your meeting were interesting and valuable, they would be attending. They would be prioritizing it. You are failing the test if you're not getting the people in the room. And that is something that we are really going to focus on a lot today is what is the test? What are we actually trying to figure out when it comes to the QBR? So don't just default to saying, oh yeah, things come up. It was a scheduling thing. We'll try again. No, understand that if they're not coming to your meeting, that's the data you're looking for. You're using the QBR to figure out, do they care about us? Are we aligned? Are we moving in the same direction? Are great things going to happen, et cetera? And by not showing up, they are telling you the answer is no. And there's some really, really fascinating data on this. You might have heard my conversation with Guy Rubin. This was back a while ago. Guy is the founder of a company called Ebsta, since been acquired by Fullcast. And they do all this crunching of tons of data sets around sales and customer success. And way back in episode 36 of this show, Guy came on and shared with me really interesting data around basically if the C-suite is showing up to your meetings, then you're going to have a much higher chance of expansion and retention. And his specific data was if your last 2 QBRs before renewal include C-suite representatives, you are 7 times more likely to open an upsell or cross-sell opportunity with that account. Conversely, if you are only meeting with junior people, you are 4 times more likely to have that account churn. And so think of attendance as an indicator. It is literally the early warning system for you. You can tell by the audience of your meetings how likely is this customer going to continue with us. You don't even need to ask them. You don't even need to say this out loud. You can simply look at that and say, what's going on? Is the C-suite showing up? Then great. We have a very good chance of continuing the partnership. Is the C-suite bailing or ghosting us? Then that in itself is a message that you need to be understanding. And so with that, how do you think about it? How do you think about the job of the QBR in that context? Is the job of the QBR for you to present your roadmap and the data and the tickets and to talk about the fancy new VP that just joined your company and so on? No, probably not. A better frame is it's a critical test, and it's a test of your ability to get the right people in the room for the duration of the meeting. Not to get them invited, not to put them on, not to CC them on the email. Get them there in the room, virtual or physical, while you're doing the meeting, and keep them there for the duration. That's the test. That's what you're being evaluated on as the person running this meeting. Your boss may not say that out loud, but that's what they're doing. And they're saying, do you have control over this meeting? Do you have the relationships built within this account? Can you create an environment that people want to come to? Can you host the meeting that's going to be valuable? And if yes, then great. As I just said, we've got data that shows that you're going to be in really good shape. If not, then we know that you are not in very good shape. And so the question is, what are you going to do with that data? What are you going to do with that information? The structural claim here is super clear, especially when we think about this in the context of keep, grow, and no surprises. Now, you've heard me talk about this on the podcast before. Keep, grow, no surprises is, in essence, our job. It's what account managers are out there doing. But guess what? If you don't have the right people in the room, then you have no keeping because you can't see what's going on. You're not having a reasonable level of conversation. You're not growing because there's no one with authority to even talk about the future together. And you're certainly not able to do the no surprises thing because you don't have enough information flowing to you to figure out what's going on. And so here's what I want you to do. I want you to stop thinking about ghosting and customers bailing on you as a people problem or a logistics problem. The whole answer here is, are they showing up or not? And that literally is the answer to that test. So the test is, can you get the right people in the room for the duration of the meeting? If yes, you're in good shape. If no, you're in bad shape. And what are you doing about that? Are you raising the right flags? Are you putting this in your risk registry, for example? How do you immediately take action based on that data that's coming through? So that's how I want us to be thinking about this going forward. Is what does that actually mean, and what are we hearing there? There's been some really interesting guests on this podcast over time who are talking about this stuff. You may remember Carl Lineker back in episode 62. And, what he was saying is, if you're not a strategic partner, then they are not showing up to the room, right? So if you're not really viewed as a partner to the VPs, to the C-level, and they're not in that room with you, you are in a totally different boat than if you are. You're viewed as simply another tool in the toolbox, yet another vendor. So this is not where we want to be. Similarly, you may remember Josh Abdullah at Asana. He and I had a conversation about this, and he manages this huge book, right? Tons and tons of customers. He has a whole process looking 9 to 12 months out, including QBRs. And he wants to be looking and understanding what's going on. Are they attending? And he knows and this was something that came across very clearly in my conversation with him, he knows that in the context of a software company, low utilization of the tool is a symptom of a problem. It's not the cause of the problem. So you need to back up and look at the cause of the problem. So the surprise is always there, right? If our job is keep growing, no surprises, the surprise is always there for us to see. We can see it. But if we don't have the meeting itself, then we're unable to. We're unable to do so. So you need to go out there and get that data. Okay, so based on that, we know that we've got to get really good at figuring out how to get the right people in the room. And as we heard from Guy Rubin, if we get C-suite people there, then we are way more likely to renew and to upsell. If we don't, then we are way more likely to have the customer churn. So that's the focus. That's what I want us to understand. But then you know how it is. Sometimes you go and you say, I want to do this QBR, and you talk to your manager, you talk to your boss about it, and you say, well, who should I invite? And they say, I don't know, whoever's going to take the call, whoever's going to show up. That's not how we want to be thinking about it. That's not the right answer. So the answer is not whoever's going to show up, because then you're going to have a low quality meeting. You need to make sure we're getting the right people there for the engagement. And we also need to make sure that they're sticking around. There was another story in that Carl Leneker podcast that I was reviewing in preparation for today, when he says, look, earlier in his career, he would go to a meeting and he'd do his thing and he'd be doing his QBR. And after about 15 minutes, the VP person would stand up and say, okay, great. I'm all set. You guys continue on without me, and leave. And he would just roll with it because that's what he thought he was doing. He thought he was being polite. He thought he was being nice just to do that. And no, what's happening there is that is a signal. And so that is a signal to be paying attention to. I want to contrast that with a very interesting story that we heard from Anthony DeShazor back in episode 59 here on Account Management Secrets. And he was running the whole customer organization at Givelify. And if you remember that, if you listen to it, it's really, really interesting. He was operating entirely without contracts. So everything was just on a month-to-month basis with his customers. But he decided to start implementing what he called an EBR process, so an executive business review process. And he went through and he was hyper-focused on customer value. And what he found was he did not lose a single customer who had an EBR, because the EBR was all focused around business value, and it was attracting the senior people from their customer organizations. Basically, if they had an EBR, the customer was going to stay. It was clear, it was predictable, and it was exactly what he wanted to have happen. And so what I want you to remember here is the right people in the room doesn't just make the meeting better. It makes the meeting, and it makes you impossible to surprise. It makes you someone who understands the account, who can see what's going on, who has the opportunity to ask the questions and to be in the room and give feedback and talk to the customer. The main idea is you do this, you get the right people in the room, you are impossible to surprise. And that is a very, very good thing for you to be as an account manager. And so with that, let's now think about, what does this mean from the customer point of view? So how do we attract them? What is it that gets them to want to stick around? You'll remember, maybe you might remember, I chatted with Brad Englert on the show. He was the CIO at the University of Texas at Austin, and he's been on the receiving end of QBR. So I have a couple stories here I want to share about that. And you say, well, how do I get the senior person, in the room? And he certainly was one of them. And the key takeaway was, I remember him telling me, I loved it when a partner or vendor would show up and they knew our values and they knew our organization, they knew what our strategic priorities were for the year. And that built for him a level of trust, because then you could say, you're doing the work, you have put in some effort, you're prepping. And by the way, a lot of this stuff is like on the website, so it's not a lot of effort, but it shows that you're committed to the partnership. Versus if you hadn't done that, and if you weren't looking at understanding their values and where they've been and their goals and priorities, then you show up and you're wasting everybody's time. And he had stories about firing tens of millions of dollar vendors because of that. So he was firing people who were, showing up unprepared, and they were on what he called the most hated vendor list. And this is by and large because of how the account manager was interacting with people inside the company. So he is looking for reasons to drop a vendor, to not show up to a meeting, to do what's right for his company, and not what's right for yours. And really important there is, are you showing up in a way that is focused on their needs? So in Brad's case, are you focused on his needs? Do you understand what's going on in his world? Yes or no? We also had a very interesting episode with Jacques Sciamas, who used to be a CFO at Charles Schwab and a bunch of other companies. And he was therefore in a position to advise the rest of the C-suite around what's going on. And in that conversation, he talks about people who flew in, like they fly in all the way just to see them in some big fancy QBR kind of meeting, and ask a question like, what keeps you up at night? Which shows that you have not prepared. You don't know what's going on. You have no idea what's going on for this company. It's a terrible question. Don't ever ask that question, by the way. And what he said was, he said, I'll tell you what keeps me up at night. Nothing. Goodbye. And he kicked the guy out of the meeting. And this is a symptom of a bad meeting. This is a symptom of not being properly prepared. And it keeps your customer reluctant to go to your meetings. When you do things like you haven't even bothered to do basic research, you are asking very simple questions, surface level questions, you're not showing up as a partner, because a partner's got to put in some work. And your customer will know, they will tell, and they will start to bail on you. They'll start to drop from your meetings. And so here's how this works. This is what it looks like. The cost of a QBR gone wrong. You don't get the senior people in the room. Yeah, that sucks. We also then know you have a higher likelihood of churn, way higher likelihood of churn. So that's no good. You also lose face in front of your boss. So your boss starts to question, does this person really have command of this account? And if it's a big account, that's a problem. The other thing that happens is your forecast for renewal and upsell and cross-sell is now off. Your forecast is no longer accurate because you don't have the information you need to determine, are they going to renew? What's the likelihood? And so on, because the senior people weren't in the room. If in the event they churn, you lose the account, now you find yourself scrambling because you have to fill a hole that you didn't know was happening, and then just to get back to even. So it's probably costing you twice that amount or more, because you've got to go, let's say you lose a $250,000 account and it's a surprise to you. You now have to go find $250K somewhere else just to keep your book of business flat. And so don't think of a bad QBR as just a wasted hour, just a bad meeting that you can shrug off. No, this is when you should be flagging high risk, low visibility, putting all hands on deck to figure out what's going on here. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to make you impossible to surprise. We're trying to make it so that you understand everything that's going on in the account. You can forecast, you can understand, you can see what's coming. You can keep everyone abreast of the things that are happening. John Huber was on the podcast, and he was telling me about this, he was running his portfolio, and he was saying, look, we're coming in at 94% renewal rate. Here's what's going on. And then wham, $1.2 million miss actually comes in at 78% during a fundraise for his company. That's a huge problem. That's a huge, huge issue. You're forecasting one thing, but you don't have the full information because you're not getting the right people to your meeting. And therefore, you're off by some gigantic amount in your forecast. Huge issue, huge concern. And big deal for you to want to get right. So that's why I keep talking about this. I keep talking about this because I want you to get this right. I want you to get better at QBRs, not just so that you can run better meetings, so that you can truly understand what's going on, so that you can truly increase your performance as an account manager. So with that, I remember the conversation way back in episode 5 of this show with Greg Danes. And Greg Danes is talking about renewals and the difference between a good renewal call and a bad renewal call. And I want you to think about this and compare it to how you're doing things today. The bad renewal call went something like this. We did really well together. Do you want to renew? Just kind of talking about it that way. Like, here's all the things we did in the past. You want to keep going forward. Versus the good way to think about this. The good way to think about it creates a goal that we are sharing. And the goal that we are sharing gets expressed as, I can't believe how much progress we've made together over the past year, but I'm so excited about what is coming next. Right? Like, think about that flow. You do that in a QBR and you're focusing on the customer's goals and the customer's outcomes, and you're giving them ownership of the result. That was something that I learned from Jim Richmond on my conversation with him. Is you're co-creating with them the ownership, and that is what makes a huge difference. The reason this is important for you is your renewal rate is one of your biggest goals for the year, right? MBOs, KPIs, OKRs. Like, renewal rate is probably the one that takes the most weight for your entire performance, for your performance review, for your compensation, your bonus, etc. And you're trying to figure out what's your renewal rate going to be, but you're not getting the right people in the meetings, which means you have very low signal. Like, you're not seeing stuff. You're flying blind, and low visibility into that number is not good and is not tolerable. This is not okay. This is exactly the thing that we are trying to address here. So where are we right now? We are at an understanding that a QBR was never just another meeting. It's not a presentation that you're trying to get through. It's not a check the box exercise. It is a structured moment that you are curating, that you are hosting, where you are going to spend time working to find out, do you still have access to the people who are going to decide your renewal? Big change in terms of how you think about it, right? And the reason I'm so passionate about this is because if you get good at QBRs, if you start attracting the right people, your performance is going to increase. I'm a huge believer in that. I know it to be true. And as you can hear from today, there's a lot of data backing me up. And so I want to share with you a program that we are running inside the Amplify community. It starts in August, starts August 12th. It's 3 sessions, and it's called QBR Mastery. QBR Mastery is 3 dedicated sessions on how you think about your QBRs, how you approach them, the mindsets, and what you're going to get out of them. So this is not tactics. It's not how to build slides. It's not how to, this kind of thing. It's about how you massively change your thinking and therefore your performance. I mean, look, there's a lot of programs out there for QBRs, right? You Google it, you can find stuff on YouTube, and a lot of it's very tactical stuff, which is not what you need. You don't need better slides. You don't need a different agenda. You don't need to insert some really fancy question into your meeting. What you need to do is figure out what's the purpose of the meeting and how do you get the right people in the room. We just established that. And you need a system around this. You need to make sure if you're running a team, everyone's doing it the same way so that it's predictable and is visible and inspectable, and we can understand what's going on. And you need to do this now so that you can make an impact. Right? We're almost halfway through the year. You can still execute these changes and have it give a positive return for you in 2026. We can do this. We can start today. You can immediately start seeing the benefits of doing this. So QBR Mastery, 3 sessions, August 12th, 19th, and 26th, 90 minutes each, taught by me. And it includes the Amplify membership. What does that mean? That means this includes all the other programs that we have, the network, connecting with other account management leaders and customer success leaders, resource library with over 55 different templates and tools, an AI prompt library, AI tools themselves, but more than anything else, a place to bring this to life. Right? Like I can't just say this from a distance and you're just put your feet up on a desk and kind of listen to another video or watch another talking head type of thing. That's not what this is about at all. This is installation, making the change, making the commitments, making it happen, and seeing the results right away. That's what we're going to be doing in QBR Mastery. I want you to check it out. Details are up on the Amplify website. That's at amplifyam.com. Go check out amplifyam.com, see what's there, see what you could do now to boost your results while there's still time in 2026. So I'm super passionate about QBRs. I hope that's coming across. I hope you are too. I hope you join on the journey so that you can get the results that you are looking for. And look, I just want to leave you with one question here today. So there's just one thing I want to leave you with to contemplate and to muse on as you go about your day. It's relating to everything we just talked about today. Over the last 6 months, if you think back to all the different QBRs that you have run over the last 6 months, what percentage of those QBRs had someone from the C-suite there? What percentage of your meetings had people from the C-suite? Don't make it up. Don't estimate. Go count it. Figure out what's going on. Figure out who showed up to your meetings. That itself is your renewal forecast. And that's exactly what we're going to be looking at in QBR Mastery. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you again next week.